This was back in the year Tafshin Lamed Daled, which corresponds to the year 5734, 1974. I had the great zchus to come to the Rebbe with my father in honor of Chof. Chof is the Yorzeit of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father. That year marked 30 years since the passing of the Rebbe's father. The Rebbe's father passed away in the year Tafshin Daled in 1944, and this was 30 years later. We came to the Rebbe for Chof. Chof that year was on a Thursday, and then there was a big Fabrengen also on Shabbos, which we'll talk about soon. And then Monday on Chof Daled, we were supposed to go back to Italy. So the flights to Europe usually leave in the evening. So we always come to Mincha to daven with the Rebbe, and then we go off to the airport. The Rebbe used to daven Mincha at 3:15 in the afternoon, so we came to Mincha. That Mincha was a little bit special, because in those years the Rebbe always used to daven upstairs in the small shul in 770. He would daven downstairs only on Shabbos or Yom Tov, or if he had to daven for the Yomid. But otherwise the Rebbe would always daven upstairs. That day, that Monday, there were the camps. Some camps came to daven with the Rebbe, so in honor of that, the Rebbe davened Mincha downstairs. It was a very interesting Mincha. At the end of Mincha, the Rebbe walked out from the shul, and behind him walked the Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Groner, and we were standing on the side, and Rabbi Groner pointed to us like this. That meant that the Rebbe wants to see us near his room in what's called Gan Eden Atachten, in front of the Rebbe's room. So obviously we went right away upstairs. The Rebbe had already gotten into his room, so we were standing there and waiting for the Rebbe to come out. And we also noticed that Rabbi Pinson from Tunis, the Rebbe's shliach to Tunis, was also there in Gan Eden Atachten. A few minutes later, the Rebbe came out from his room. He had 2 bottles of mashke, of vodka, and a few dollar bills under his arm, like this. The Rebbe came out. He gave Rabbi Pinson a bottle of mashke, and he told him, I wasn't really listening because the Rebbe wasn't talking to me. He said basically something about making fabrengens in different places or so on. Then the Rebbe turned to my father and he gave him a bottle of mashke, and he also told him to make fabrengens in different places. Then the Rebbe pulled out from under his arm the dollars. The Rebbe had $10 bills and single dollar bills. The Rebbe took 3 $10 bills, gave it to Rabbi Pinson, and he said, "Das is lekaved shnas hashloshim." This is for the 30 years. It was 30 years from the Yorzeit of his father. Then the Rebbe took 3 $10 bills, and he gave it to my father as shnas hashloshim. Then the Rebbe took 3 single dollars. I was a young kid then. I was right after Bar Mitzvah. These are the $3 that the Rebbe gave me then, and the Rebbe told me, "Das is for shnas hashloshim." And then the Rebbe turned to my father, I'll never forget it, with a broad smile, and the Rebbe said, "Ayasher koyach fahren kumen af Yorzeit." Thank you for coming for the Yorzeit. Why did the Rebbe mention this concept of Ayasher koyach, of coming for the Yorzeit? And especially since I have the great zchus of being named after the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, I'd like to share some personal details that I was zoiche, that I merited to have from the Rebbe and from his mother, the Rebbe Tzachana, to myself, connected with the fact that my name is Levi Yitzchak. I will not discuss the life story of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, because that would take a little too long, because as you can see here, there's a sefer called Toldos Levi Yitzchak, which is the biography, the life story of Rabbi Levi Yitzchak to a certain extent, because there was really much more. This was written many years later, and it's 3 volumes. This is also available in English, most of it, in this book, which is called Rabbi, Mystic, Leader. This is the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak. He was a very, besides for knowing a lot of Nigla the Torah, the revealed part of Torah, he was a very big Kabbalist. So, but I will not discuss any of his life story right now, and especially his Torah. When we want to start learning some of his Torah, there are 4 volumes that came out, which are called Likuti Levi Yitzchak. And this is, it would take a lifetime for somebody just to be able to read through it, because there's so much of Soidos HaTorah, of the secrets of Torah, and especially Al Pi Kabbalah. Unbelievable. And we could even just talk about that, who knows how long, but right now is not the place. When the manuscripts of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak came out from Russia in approximately the early 70s, these were written on the Zohar. So the Rebbe every Shabbos would talk about that. He would take a line from what his father wrote and give a long sicha on that. And some of those sichas are in these Sfarim, Teiras, Menachem, Tiferes, Levi Yitzchak. So we could talk about that. And then there are more Sfarim that came out, Penine Levi Yitzchak, which are gems taken from the Sfarim of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, which there's a lot to be spoken about that. And then Pe'er Levi Yitzchak, this discusses a lot of the minhagim, a lot of the customs of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, etc. So, as I said before, I will not be discussing any of his Torah, and you could keep me here for a year and I won't stop talking about Rebbe Levi's Torah. His Mesiras Nefesh, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak was taken to jail, unfortunately, in 1939, and he was tortured for 5 years. And he was sent to exile in Kazakhstan, and he died there. While he was in exile, the Rebbe's mother brought to Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, when he was in exile, 2-3 of the books of the Zohar, which is the mystical part of Torah, and he wanted to write some of his ideas, but there was no pen, no paper, nothing. So the Rebbe Tzachane manufactured from the herbs ink, red ink, blue ink, purple, all kinds of colors. And I have a book over here that has some beautiful pictures of the actual writings of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. It's amazing to see how he wrote all of this, and this was all while he was tortured and in exile. He was tortured in such a way that there are only 2 pictures of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. There's this picture, which was taken by the Russians when they took him to jail, but we never saw this picture until 1990 or so. The only picture that we had was a picture that was taken when he was in exile in Kazakhstan. And the 2 pictures are so different from each other, because one, he's still before they started torturing him, and one is afterwards. And here there's a picture of after he was tortured. When the Rebbe received this picture, he wrote on the bottom, Adoni Avi Zal, my father, may he rest in peace, may his memory be a blessing, and question mark. In other words, the Rebbe didn't recognize that this is his father 5 years after he was taken to jail. So there's so much to talk about Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, which unfortunately we don't have now the time to do that. And I will just be discussing right now, as I said before, some personal points that I had with Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. First of all, just what happened on that famous Shabbos, as I said, when the Rebbe said, Yorzeit. On that Shabbos, which was 30 years from the Rebbe's father's Yorzeit, the Rebbe said that he would like that all those who saw my father, especially in the later years, and they were meshamish my father, they served my father, if they could please come up and say l'chaim together with me. And of course, the main ones who were there by the Fabrengen were members of the famous Lubavitch Araskin family, Rebbe Yankov Yosef with his children, Rebbe David, Rebbe Leibel. Rebbe Leibel happened to be a personal friend of my father because they grew up together over there in Alma Ata, where Rebbe Levi Yitzchak was exiled. But my father never saw Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. He was in Alma Ata, but his father was afraid to take him. Those days, to deal with Ashnerson meant you're going straight to jail in Russia. So my father never happened to see Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. I'm just going to pause for a moment, go back to that Fabrengen. And the Rebbe, as he gave l'chaim to the Raskin family and the other people, he turns looking towards my father's place at the Fabrengen. My father stood over there on the left-hand side. And my father didn't say anything. My father was very close to the Rebbe Tzachane, as I'll discuss in a moment. And the Rebbe sent, I believe it was the Rebbe David Raskin, to ask my father if he was ever meshamish Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. And my father, of course, didn't answer. Then the Rebbe sent Rebbe David Raskin and asked him, Efshar atrangi gosna glaz tea. Maybe he poured a cup of tea. My father didn't answer. And the Rebbe said, Fun deswegen, still let him say l'chaim. We assume that is because right after, my grandfather did see Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, but my father, he was a little boy, he didn't. And after Rebbe Levi Yitzchak passed away, which is in the summertime in Av, the winter came and she needed wood. So my grandfather told my father and my aunt, his older sister, my father's older sister, that they should go and bring wood to the Rebbe Tzachane, the Rebbe's mother, knock on the door and run away. So what happened was she opened the door and she found wood. And this happened a few times. And my father, what he used to do is, he used to go to the offices of the Russian generals over there, and he was a little kid, so he would steal the wood from them and used to bring it there. One time the Rebbe Tzachana saw who that was, and this became a very friendship between the two families. It's a long story, we're not going to go through all the details, but then later when the Rebbe Tzachana got to Moscow and they were supposed to smuggle through the borders, this was later already in 1946, the famous time that all the Chassidim left as Polish citizens and had to go with false passports. It's a long story. Bottom line, the Rebbe Tzachana did not want to leave Russia. My two aunts, my father's sisters, my Mumma Hadassah and Mumma Yocheved, Mumma Hadassah Perman and Mumma Yocheved Zalmanov, these two aunts of mine, they were still girls at the time, they weren't married yet, but they were very, very much involved in the whole procedure. And whoever was in charge then to send the people, sent them to the Rebbe Tzachana because that they should persuade her. And when they came up the stairs to come to the Rebbe Tzachana's apartment, where she was staying, they heard voices how she was saying, no, I don't want to go, I don't want to go. And then when these two girls came up and they persuaded her, she said, yeah, with them I will go. And she actually left Russia. So the two families became very close. Then years later, in the 50s, in late 50s, when my father came to 770 to learn, so he would go and visit the Rebbe Tzachana here in Crown Heights, where she lived in different apartments, and later she lived in 1418 President Street. So it was almost natural that when my parents had their first boy, they went on shlichus to Italy in 1958. I was born a few years later, so they called me Levi Yitzchak. When the Rebbe sent a special $5 bill for my bris, when I was 2 years old, my parents sent a picture to the Rebbe Tzachana of myself, Levi Yitzchak, to the Rebbetzin. She was very, very excited when she received this picture. I heard from some Hasidim who visited the Rebbe Tzachana after she received this picture. The Rebbe Tzachana had a very small apartment. She lived by herself. So she had one room as soon as you come in, which served as a dining room and living room. There was a table, a small table in the middle, a small couch, and a break front. On the break front, she had like a little piece of furniture. On it was a very interesting frame that one of the Hasidic families in Crown Heights, one of the prominent Lubavitch families, the Eunuch family. Rebbe Eunuch was one of the people who was Meshamish. He was very, very much involved in the Rebbe's house, in the Rebbe Tzachana's house, etc. And he was very, very close to the Rebbe and the Rebbetzins, etc. And it's another whole story for itself. And the Rebbe was Mesader Kiddushin. He officiated by the wedding of the eunuchs. So there's a beautiful picture of that chuppah, a beautiful picture of the Rebbe. So this is what I heard, that they bought for the Rebbe a frame that had a place for 5 pictures, 4 on the sides and 1 in the center. There are 7 Lubavitch Rebbeim, but we have pictures only of 5 of them. The first one, the Alter Rebbe. The second one, the Mittel Rebbe, we don't have a picture. Then we have the Tzemach Tzedek, the third, the Rebbe Marash, we don't have a picture. The Rebbe Rashab, the 5th, we have a picture. The Fidik Rebbe, we have a picture, the previous Rebbe, and the Rebbe. So they took the 4 Rebbeim that we have pictures, the Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Rashab, and the Fidik Rebbe, so the 4 pictures, and in the middle, that picture of the Rebbe by their chuppah, and this was on the break front of the Rebbe Tzachana. When the Rebbe Tzachana got the picture of Levi Yitzchak, she put it on the other side of the break front, so she had these 2 pictures on her break front. And later she sent a letter to my parents, which I'm holding here, the original, where she wrote Mishpachas Garelik Hanichbada to the Mishpachas Garelik, and she wrote a whole bunch of things. And then she writes, and this I cherish, Levi Yitzchak bli ein hore a ganzer bocher. Levi Yitzchak is a full-fledged bocher. I was only 2 years old at the time, but this is the compliment I got, and I am very, very proud of it. This was when I was 2 years old. When I was 7 years old, that was the first time that we came to the Rebbe, our family, from Italy, and I'd never seen the Rebbe before. And we were here for about 2 months. I had a lot of personal attention from the Rebbe in that trip, but the highlight was we were here from approximately Yud Tes Kislev till around Yud Gimel Shvat. On Yud Gimel Shvat, which was the day we had to leave, as usual, the flights to Europe, to Italy, leave in the evening. So we come to Menachem at 3:15. We came at 3:15 we came to 770 at about 2:45, and we were standing in the hallway upstairs. For those of you who are familiar with 770, waiting for the Rebbe to come out to Mincha in another half hour. The Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Chodakov, happened to pass, Hashgacha Pratis, Divine Providence, happened to pass by, and he saw us there. He went into the Rebbe's room. He comes out, and he says, the Rebbe would like to see the Garelik family in Yechidus right now. Have a private audience with the Rebbe at 2:45 in the afternoon. Usually you had to make appointments for months before you could get into the Rebbe, and here the Rebbe wants us right away. So of course, we all went into the Rebbe's room. My father wasn't there at the time. It was just my father, my mother, and the 6 of us. And to make a long story short, the Rebbe spoke to each one of the children. When it came to my turn, I'm just going to say one point of that Yechidus. The Rebbe asked me, "Was ist dein Name? What is your name?" So I said, Levi Yitzchak. The Rebbe asked me, "Was lernst du? What do you learn?" I said, Chumash. Which Chumash? Bereshis. This was all in Yiddish. I'm just saying it in English. Welche Parsha? Which Parsha? I said, Parsha Toldus. The Rebbe asked, "What does Toldus mean?" I said, the Kinder, the children. The Rebbe said, Wem is Kinder? Whose children? And I said, Yitzchak's. The Rebbe said, who was Yitzchak's father? Avraham. Who were Yitzchak's children? Yaakov and Esav. The Rebbe asked me, wer is given mer frum? Which means who was more religious? Now, I was 7 years old. I spoke Italian, I spoke Yiddish. But I never heard the word frum before. For some reason, in Italy, nobody uses that word, I guess. So I turned around to my mother, and I told her in Italian, non capisco quella parola. I don't understand that word. The Rebbe smiled. And later I found out the Rebbe speaks Italian. And the Rebbe said, wer is given mer gut? Who was more good? So I said, Yaakov. So the Rebbe said, no, if that's the case, let's talk about Yaakov. So then the Rebbe says, tell me, do you know if Yaakov had any children? Because it's discussed in the next parsha. I was so lucky that the Rebbe asked me that question, because when I came then, I got so many presents from my uncles and my aunts and my cousins, that one of the presents was a puzzle of the 12 Shvatim, of the 12 tribes. So I knew them. So as soon as the Rebbe asked me, do you know if you had any children? I said, sure. And the Rebbe said, do you know their names? I said, yep. The Rebbe said, start saying. So I said, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda. The Rebbe said, stop. What was the name of the third? Levi. What is your name? Levi. The next question was something like Vishtimtes, how does it, I'm not remember exactly the question. All I remember is that I answered, the Rebbe created 2 Levis. And then the Rebbe got serious. And the Rebbe asked me, Unach wemem bist du anamen? And who are you named after? I thought at that moment, I knew that I'm named after the Rebbe's father, but I didn't know. In Italian, there's a beautiful way how to say your, but in a way of honor. In English, your just means yours. It's not elegant. And I was thinking how to say it, and I didn't want to say to the Rebbe's tata. I just felt uncomfortable telling the Rebbe. Bottom line, I said, the Rebbe's tata. As soon as I said the Rebbe's tata, the Rebbe gave me a big smile. He called me over, and he gave me a siddur, which I keep very treasured. So the Rebbe asked me who am I named after, so therefore I am very, very proud of that. So let's go back now to we said before about the Shnas Hashloshim, the Rebbe said, from Kumafar in Yorzeit. Thank you for coming for the Yorzeit. So we see that for the Rebbe, it really meant a lot. Fast forward another 10 years, comes to Shnas Harboim, 40 years from the passing of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. And there was a Fabrengen, Shabbos Chof. And the Rebbe in the Fabrengen said that, towards the end of the Fabrengen, that the whole concept of spreading Chassidus has to do with the person who we are celebrating his Yorzeit today, Chof, my father, Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, because he was sent to jail for spreading Chassidus, and he died in captivity, etc. And therefore, since there are some people here who were together with my father and they were mishamish my father, they should please say together with me l'chaim, and the schus, the merit of the Bal Hayilula is going to stand for them, etc. And all the people said l'chaim. My father Of course, did not, because he thought that what happened 10 years before was just something unusual, and he did not feel that he ever saw Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. And that Farbrengen went as normal. The next Shabbos, which was already Shabbos of Varchim Elul, my father was still in New York at that Farbrengen. The Rebbe spoke one Sicha, then came the second Sicha. In the second Sicha, the Rebbe started off that now is the time when we should complete what we did not finish last Shabbos. And the Rebbe discussed the whole thing that the Rebbe in Torah, that he started discussing, and he didn't answer all the questions, and he answered them. Then the Rebbe said there's another thing that happened last Shabbos which needs to be completed. Last Shabbos I requested, it was the Yorzeit of my father, I asked that all those who were Zoichet to Meshabesh my father should say L'chaim together with me, because serving my father is really something that I should have done, in other words the Rebbe himself. Therefore I wanted to say L'chaim together with them. There's one gentleman here that I think he was together with my father, and he even served him, and he still did not say L'chaim, most probably because he is very shy, as usual. And this is a concept of humbleness, which sometimes in Kedusha, in holiness, we have humbleness. But regarding this concept of saying L'chaim, it's missing. And therefore, he could now make up for it and come up and say L'chaim here. I don't want to say his name because he's right here by the Farbrengen and he hears what I'm saying. So if he was there, he should please come up and say L'chaim to complete what he did not say L'chaim for whatever reason. And if he was not there, then I don't mean him. And the Rebbe continued speaking for over an hour on the issues that had to be completed from the Farbrengen before. When the Rebbe finished the Sicha, and everybody wanted to see what's going to happen here, the Rebbe turns to the left, he gives a look at my father, and my father got the message. He came up to the Rebbe gave him a nice L'chaim and a very nice bracha. So we see that the Rebbe cherished when they take this concept of his father, because this is something personal of the Rebbe. Now, another interesting point, the big Farbrengens of the Rebbe were always Yud Shvat, the day of the Frierdiker Rebbe's passing, or the other big holidays. Chof was sort of something private of the Rebbe. My father came from Italy every single year, once a year, for Chof, and the Rebbe really appreciated. So therefore, we are now coming to Shivim Shana, 70 years of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. So definitely we should take this in consideration. And therefore I would like to finish off with an unbelievable letter that the Rebbe sent that year in Shnas Ha'arbaim, in the 40th year. It is in Lekutei Sichos Chelik Lamed Tes, and it is on page, volume 39, on page 231. And the Rebbe writes as follows, I'm saying it in English obviously, that the Shabbos after Tes Vav Av, the Shabbos after the 15th of Av, is going to be Chof Av, which is the Yorzeit of my father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, the son of Baruch Shneur, 40 years. The Rebbe says, Ve'alai hachoiv ve'aschus gadol, it is my obligation and my great schus to suggest that, and request, vechulu, etc., that people should learn through a hisvadus, through a Farbrengen, from the Torah of my father, and to give tzedakah in memory of my father. Which my father is someone who was Meiser Nefesh. He gave up his life for the spreading of Yiddishkeit amongst the Jews who are, in quotations, were behind the Iron Curtain, and because of that he was imprisoned, because of that he was exiled, and he passed away in Galus. Zechusoy Yogen Aleinu Valkol Yisrael Shlita. May his chus, his merit, stand for us and for all Yidden Shlita. Therefore, this Shabbos is going to be the Yorzeit of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, 70 years. It is appropriate that we should take even just a few lines from Lekutei Levi Yitzchak and learn it everyone together. So just 2 lines from Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. One letter that he wrote to the Rebbe regarding the passing of a tzaddik, because it's going to the passing of Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. Many people see that Lubavitchers have a problem with the passing of a tzaddik, that they just can't deal with it. And the answer is not because they can't deal with it, but because Chassidus, and especially how Rebbe Levi Yitzchak explains it, gives a total different dimension to the concept of the passing of a tzaddik, which is a much higher stage than he was in life. I'm not going to go now through the whole parsha, but just in a one-liner, whoever wants to check it out, look in Lekutei Levi Yitzchak, in the part which is Igros Kodesh, the letters, on page Reish Nun Dalet 254, where Rebbe Levi Yitzchak says that normally the day of a passing of a person is called Histalkus, which means passing. The neshama, the soul goes up by the tzaddikim, by the big tzaddikim. And he says, the tzaddikim hagdoilim beyoser, the real great tzaddikim. And especially beyichud, those that spread the secrets of Torah. It's not called Yom Histalkus, it's called Hilula. Hilula means like a wedding. It's a joyous day. Why? And he goes through a whole lengthy letter, which is beyond the time that we have right now. So if anybody wants to see it, it's, as I mentioned before, in Igros Kodesh Peish Reish Nun Daled, where it is unbelievable how he explains regarding the passing of the Alter Rebbe, which really he was talking about all the Rabbeim and also himself. Ultimately, in that same book, on page Chof Yud Tes 419, a very interesting line regarding the Rebbe, his son. This is a letter that the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak wrote to the Rebbe, to his son, when the Rebbe turned 36 years old. And he explains what is the birthday of the Rebbe. The birthday of the Rebbe on Yud Aleph Nisan, the 11th day of the month of Nisan. And the Rebbe Levi Yitzchak says as follows. On the 11th day of Nisan, the first 12 days of the month, every day we read one of the Nisim, Anasi, the princes that they brought the sacrifices when they inaugurated the Mishkan, the sanctuary in the desert. So every day was another prince of another tribe. The prince of Yud Aleph of the 11th day was Asher. What's so special about Asher, the prince of the day of the Rebbe's birthday? Asher, says the Rebbe, the Geula, the redemption, comes through Asher. When the Jews had to leave Egypt, without Asher they couldn't leave. Why? Because from Asher came out Serach bas Asher. Serach was the daughter of Asher. When they had to leave, God told Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe told Moshe Rabbeinu, that he has to take the Aron, the casket of Yosef, out of Egypt. So all the Jews are ready to go out. No one knows where is the casket of Yosef. Who was there to tell Moshe Rabbeinu? Serach bas Asher. Serach told Moshe Rabbeinu where Yosef's Aron is laying. And as Rebbe Levi Yitzchak says, she is the one that made the final number of 70 when they went into Egypt with Yaakov. She's the one that showed Moshe Rabbeinu where Yosef is buried, and then Moshe was able to take the bones of Yosef with him, and was Yitzias Mitzrayim. Ublizois, without this, Loi Hoisa Geula, couldn't have been the redemption. It's very interesting to use such words regarding the Rebbe's birthday, how without Asher we cannot have the redemption. I guess Rebbe Levi Yitzchak was preparing the Rebbe for his big job that he is going to have to prepare the world for the ultimate redemption. So let's get ready for this Chof. Let's learn something from Rebbe Levi Yitzchak. The Rebbe makes it very clear that his chus will stand for all of us, and let us hope that before Chof we will be zeicha, we will already merit to the revelation of Mashiach, and we will be reunited with all the tzaddikim, and of course Rebbe Levi Yitzchak, and then we will be zeicha to hear the Torah Chadashim Iti Teitze. We'll be able to hear the new Torah, which Mashiach is going to reveal to every one of us, and we're all going to be together in the Beis Hamikdash Hashlishi, Teikef Umiyad Mamash.